All right, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you just briefly of the basic questions I would ask in a normal trial. And before I do that, I'd like everyone to raise their hand. I want to administer an oath to you. But after I'm done giving you the oath, rather than have each of you unmute and have a lot of people just bouncing in and out, I'm going to simply ask confirmation to the oath by having you give me a thumbs up. So if you could do that, I would appreciate that. So if everyone would please raise your right hand, I'm going to administer an oath to you. I see all the hands up in the air. Do each of you solemnly swear or affirm that you will answer truthfully all questions put to you by the court and counsel concerning your qualifications to act as a juror in this case? If so, please give me a thumbs up. And I'm seeing thumbs up from everybody. And for juror 167, since I couldn't see your hand or your thumb, can you affirm that that you heard that and that you agree to that oath?
I affirm.
All right, thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we select a jury for the case of Holly Harmon versus Chad Janes. The case was filed by Holly Harmon, who we call the plaintiff. Her lawyer is Stephen Voorhees. This case was filed against Chad Janes, who we call the defendant. His lawyer is Glenn Barger. I'm going to ask the attorneys to briefly introduce themselves so you can see them and hear them, starting with Mr. Voorhees.
Good afternoon, everybody.
That's Mr. Voorhees. Mr. Barger.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
And could I have Ms. Harmon and Mr. Janes both turn their videos on and unmute themselves, and please say hello to the jury so they can see you.
I'm Holly.
And you'll see that Holly Harmon is the name of the plaintiff. On the screen it says Holly Richards. Ms. Richards was married after filing the lawsuit, so her legal name at the time of filing the lawsuit was Holly Harmon. Her legal name today is Holly Richards, so that's why her name is appearing that way. And Mr. Janes, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Chad Janes.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Janes and Ms. Harmon, you may now turn your cameras off and you may mute yourself. So my role as the judge is to keep order, to rule on questions of law, and instruct you on the law. The jury's role is to decide the facts and then apply the facts to the law I provide. Now, I'm going to read to you a summary of the case. This lawsuit was filed by plaintiff Holly Harmon because of a motor vehicle collision on April 5, 2017. The defendant, Chad Janes, admits that he was at fault for running a red light. Defendant admits that plaintiff sustained some injury. Defendant denies the nature and extent of plaintiff's injuries. Now, this is a civil case, not a criminal case. You may have seen criminal cases on TV or in the movies and know that a criminal prosecutor must prove the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Civil cases are different. In a civil case like this one, the party who has to prove something only has to prove that it's more likely true than not true. Now, each juror must be able to judge this case fairly and objectively. Therefore, if any juror knows of or has any association with any of the parties, lawyers, or witnesses, or if any juror has any knowledge of or has formed any opinion about this case, this should be brought to the court's attention. Now, I'm going to ask you 5 preliminary questions to help us gauge your ability to serve on this jury. First, do either of you know either Ms. Harmon, Mr. Janes, or either of the lawyers? If so, please raise your hand. I'm seeing no hands. Second, the following people may be called as witnesses in this case. If you know of any of these witnesses, or if the names even sound familiar to you and you think you might know the person, please raise your hand. First is Dr. Scott Bowles, B-O-W-L-E-S. Next is Dr. David Russo, Russo. Next is Maren Swensen, Swensen. Next is Derek Richards. Next is Danielle Bass, Bass. And next is Jennifer Lamb, like the animal, Lamb. And Mr. Barger, I don't have the first names of Dr. Magnum and Dr. Leonard. Could you state those, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Daniel Mangum and Hubert Leonard.
So does anyone know Dr. Hubert Leonard or Dr. Daniel Magnum, Mangum? All right, I'm seeing no hands. If for some reason if you're selected as a juror and someone comes and testifies and you realize once you see the person testifying that you recognize the person, you just didn't know their name, would you please let me know that? My third question, based on the case summary I gave you a few moments ago, do any of you feel that your personal views concerning this type of case might affect your ability to be fair and impartial about this trial? If so, please raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hands. Next, do any of you know each other? Anybody who's on this panel know each other? Not seeing any hands. And then the fifth question, I wanted to talk to you about the time commitment for this trial. In the questionnaire you were asked to fill out, we indicated that the trial would last through Thursday. There's a chance it could end as early as Wednesday, but it could be that we would have you deliberating on Thursday. So I want to make sure that people are planning on being here through Thursday if they're selected. And I know that I believe it was Ms. Hernandez indicated that there was an issue that she had, and so I'll address that. But other than Ms. Hernandez, and I guess Brooks Ferris, I also saw that. Does anyone have any issue serving on a jury through Thursday of this week? If so, please raise your hand. And yes, sir, Juror 411.
I'm gonna be out of state
When are you going to go out of state?
on Wednesday.
And what's the purpose for that? Is it business travel, personal, family matter?
It's I believe it's family because I always go at this time of year to go visit my grandpa.
Okay, and where are you traveling?
California.
How are you getting there?
Airplane.
Do you already have an airplane ticket?
Yeah.
Is
I
it
got
not?
a month
I'm
ago.
sorry?
I got it a month or two ago
Okay. How long are you going to be out of state?
for a whole week.
Is it a ticket that could be changed without any change fees?
No, because we already did that once. So they're gonna
Okay.
charge us again.
Okay. All right. Anyone else besides Juror 411 and the two other jurors that I mentioned? Okay. Juror 473.
So yeah, this is Brooks. I did mention, I can't spend a lot of time. I'm leaving the state on Saturday though, so as long as it's,
Yeah,
wrapped up prior.
it'll definitely be done by then. And by the way, so Mr. Ferris, or excuse me, juror number 473, I understand that you work in sales and you're the sole provider for your family. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what kind of sales work is it? Is inside sales, outside sales?
It's inside sales. Digital marketing
And-
sales.
Okay. And is there any of the work that you could do that you would normally do during working hours, anything that you could catch up on either over the lunch hour or after we're done for the day or before the day starts?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just mostly concerned if it was going to be an extended period of time. I didn't actually see that it was slated to be wrapped up by Thursday. So
Okay. So as long as it's wrapped up by Thursday, you'll be okay.
yeah, like I said, I'm leaving the state on Saturday. So as long as it's
It will, if this goes through Saturday, we've got bigger problems.
okay.
So, okay. And Ms. Hernandez, excuse me, juror number 65. And I'm normally in court, I refer to people by their last names. This is a little different because you're on video and we are recording this. I'm taking screenshots. So just to protect juror anonymity, we're going to refer to you by numbers as opposed to names. But there may be times, we use your name. So it's not a problem if someone mentioned your name, but we're going to make our best efforts to refer to you this way. Essentially, we don't want somebody to, if this is on the internet, to say, oh, here's so-and-so, Mr. Jones, that's identifiable as opposed to juror number 32. So that's why we're doing that. But so juror number 65, I understand that you work in the rental system and rental assistance in Clark County. It's a busy time now because applications have been coming in and you've restarted. Is that right?
Hi, sorry. Yeah, so we were supposed to get the second wave of the Treasury funding. We were supposed to get that this week, but it doesn't look like we'll get it. So if I'm chosen, that's okay.
Okay, so you're okay as well. Great. Okay. Does anyone else have any other issue about serving through Thursday? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a break now for lunch. I'm going to ask you to come back at 1 o'clock. I think the easiest thing to do, in fact, I know the easiest thing to do is going to be to have you stay connected to your WebEx. So don't disconnect, but stay connected. But you can put your devices on mute and to turn your videos off. And you're free to do whatever you want for the next half hour. But please be back a few minutes before 1 o'clock and ready to turn your cameras on, ready to go at 1 o'clock, and the lawyers will begin with asking you questions. Okay? Before we break, though, I do want to make a couple points. You know almost nothing about this case other than you know the names of the lawyers and the parties, and you know it's a personal injury case. But even though you don't know anything about the case yet, it's still important that you not research anything about the case. So don't research anything about motor vehicle accidents or the lawyers involved or the parties involved, etc. Because the only way you can fairly decide a case is to decide a case based on everything that's received in open court. And if you were to do your own research, and I'll talk about this more in detail when the trial starts, but if you were to do your own research, it just simply wouldn't be fair to the parties, and you might get inaccurate or incomplete information that we couldn't address. So please don't do any research. Please don't talk to anybody about the case. You can tell people you're on jury duty or you're being in jury selection, but you can't talk about the substance of the case until the case is over. And please don't talk to each other about this if you're in a breakout room. You can talk if you're in a breakout room about whatever you want, as long as you don't talk about the case. So before we go though, I will let, so juror number 411, since you have the airplane ticket on Wednesday, by the way, what time is your flight on Wednesday?
6 in the morning.
6 a.m. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I'm gonna let you go, Mr. Juror number 411. And just for future reference for all of you, if you're ever called for jury duty in the future, there is an option to indicate to the court that you're not available on a particular day and change your jury service to a different date. So if you have, if there's a work function or if there's a vacation planned or something that you can't move, you can notify the court ahead of time, so you don't even have to go through this process, and you can move the date. If something came up from the time you got summons until it was time for trial, then you'd have to raise that with the judge, but you can do this ahead of time. So that's a kind of a public service announcement for the next time you are called for jury service. So before we break, does anyone have any questions about anything? No questions? So please leave your WebEx on. Please turn your cameras off, except for juror number 167. If you're able to use your husband's laptop, then you can disconnect and reconnect with his laptop. But otherwise, I will see everybody a little before 1 o'clock. So thank you, everybody. And we can go off the record. All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Judge Dahlin. We're back on the record. I don't know about you, but that was a very quick 30 minutes. That went by very fast. I will say one advantage of doing a virtual jury trial is that we could probably have a more compact trial day. We don't spend as much time waiting around, because if we were in the normal courthouse, the lunch break could be an hour, even an hour and a half at times. Part of that is the lawyers and the jurors like going to and from, going through security, going out to get lunch, and you have to wait in line at a place to get lunch. Whereas if you're at your house, you can walk to the refrigerator, get something to eat, and you're back. And the same amount. A trial takes a certain amount of time of actual trial time and court time, and if we can reduce the amount of time we have on breaks, that means the sooner you can get back to your normal life. So that is one advantage of doing a remote jury trial. And I appreciate your flexibility about this. And if you're selected as a juror and you need flexibility in scheduling either a longer break or a shorter break, I'm happy to talk to you about that. Before I have the lawyers ask them questions, there are a couple of things. One, I did confirm that the folks that are using the tablets and the phones, or the tablets and the phones, you won't be able to go to stage view. You'll just, that's just the setup that Apple has with WebEx. I did have a question for juror number 234. I know you're using a phone today, but would you have another device that would be available that you could use if you're selected as a juror?
Nothing with a camera. I do have a school computer, but I can't download any programs on it. So no, my Apple is out to the shop until Wednesday. It comes back Wednesday.
Okay. How are you able to see both, I guess, me talking right now and when I was showing the PowerPoint earlier, were you able to see well enough with the iPhone or the Android, whatever you're using?
If I hit can I try hitting your picture and see if you get big?
I don't think that does change.
Okay, all right. I can see you fine.
Okay, and how about with the PowerPoint? Were you able to see that, or was that
Yes.
too tiny?
I mean, I had to get close to read it, but I could read it. Yes.
Okay, so if you were selected to serve as a juror on this case, and since you don't have another device, do you feel like you could concentrate and pay attention with the smaller screen?
Oh yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I will say for the jurors who are using WebEx through the web browser, there isn't as much functionality through the browser. So if you're selected as a juror, we'll ask that you make sure you download the app before trial starts tomorrow. And if you don't have the instructions, I can send that to you separately. They were in the instructions that went out to all the jurors. I realize there's a big packet of information. There's a lot of stuff, and some things could be looked over. But if you don't know how to get the app, let me know and I can get the app to you. And just for the record, we do have juror 167 using a laptop now, so we can see his face. So it's nice to see juror 167. And does anyone have any questions about anything before we proceed? Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to turn this over to the lawyers, but before we do that, I want to read one additional instruction to you about that. So the lawyers have an opportunity to ask you questions, and the purpose of the questions is not to argue the case or to embarrass you, but rather to determine your qualifications to serve as jurors on this specific trial. So please respond to the lawyer's questions openly, honestly, sincerely, and completely. And if you do not understand a question, please ask the lawyer to restate it. And of course, if anyone can't hear anything at any point, please let us know. And if you get disconnected somehow and you can't talk to us, but wave your hand if your camera's still working that we could see you, I'd appreciate doing that. Since you're in an unfamiliar setting amongst strangers, there may be times when it's uncomfortable for you to be open, honest, complete, and sincere in your answers to the lawyer's questions. This process, however, requires you to overcome any discomfort you may have and do your best to be open, honest, sincere, and complete when you answer. It is extremely important, and the fairness of this trial depends on it. If you are asked a question that involves something that you consider very sensitive or private, please tell us so, and we can arrange to receive your answer outside the presence of the other jurors. Now, when the attorneys finish their questions, you'll be done for the day. I'll meet then with the lawyers and select those of you who are going to serve as the jurors starting tomorrow, and we will send you an email this afternoon letting you know who's been selected. But for now, I'm going to turn this over to the lawyers for the questions, and we'll start with Mr. Voorhees, who represents Ms. Harmon.